Shen Tang woke up on his way to Hair and found that the world was very unscientific. The heavenly descending God stone, 100 nations struggle. Wen Ning Wen Xin, exports come true. Gathering martial courage, splitting mountains and seas. She thought she had a small white face, with a leaping gun, and the next second she possessed armor, a long spear in her hand, and one person forming an army. 1,000 soldiers and horses could kill 7 in and 7 out. The tuberculosis ghost in her eyes, reciting scattered stars, the sky like a round cover, the land like a chess game, arranging troops and formations, effortlessly coming. This TM can't be considered unscientific. It is clear that the coffin of science has been nailed to death by theology. And she, my lord, there is a severe drought in Beijing. Why don't you cry? Shen Tang. Master, Nanzhou is flooded. Why don't you smile more? Shen Tang. Looking at the 10 bowls of rice that she had taken down, the clean pockets on her face, and a group of villagers who were starving, malicious, and causing trouble all day, the village chief Shen Tang, who seemed to be a rice bucket reincarnation and a true soul painter, had to give up his beloved paintbrush and was forced to embark on the path of applying for the position of Marquis. Keywords of the novel. Step down, let me come without pop-ups. Step down, let me come to download the complete set of TXT. Step down, let me come to read the latest chapters. Chapter 1001. Distribution. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1001. Distribution. Don't pretend to be dead, get up quickly. In a daze, Shen Tang felt like someone had kicked him. Kicking is not enough, the other party is still cursing. MD, who kicked me? She curled up her calves in pain and weakly opened her eyes. The world in front of us seems to have been stripped of the veil that was about to be covered, transforming from a matte texture to a high definition tempered texture. What happened? The almost explosive pain made her take a deep breath and stare blankly at everything unfamiliar in front of her. Who were we drinking with last night? It seems that in the latter half of the drink, the editor still called to urge her to draft, and she had to hold on to her drunkenness to get a paintbrush more. I can't think of it. But it's certain that it shouldn't be like this in front of us. Shen Tang pinched herself fiercely in secret until a sharp pain came from that skin, shattering her luck. Seeing my unfamiliar hands, 4 words popped out of my mind: she has traveled. At the same time, there is also the meaning represented by time travel. I just don't know if it's drinking to death or staying up late to rush through the draft. The more she thought about it, the more it hurt in her head. It seemed like a little person was hammering inside her, causing Shen Tang to quickly stop. Hurry up and eat, it's good to get on the road after finishing. She was covering her head to ease the piercing pain, and the sunlight above her head was blocked by the tall figure. The visitor was wearing a pair of grass shoes stained with black-brown mud, and casually threw a palm-sized cake with a rough burnt surface. The cake landed on the mud outside her skirt. Regardless of whether Shen Tang will eat the cake that has been stained with mud, he will just send it to the next person. The next second, a hand lightning struck her side. Grab the cake and shrink it back. Shen Tang slowed down and had to look over with suspicion. The person grabbing the cake was a disheveled woman, holding the cake in both hands and forcefully stuffing it into her mouth, like a starving ghost reincarnating. Afraid that Shen Tang would snatch it back, he didn't even pat the mud on the cake and soon stuffed all the small cakes into his mouth. In the end, he sucked on the foam on his fingers as if he was still unsatisfied. Shen Tang. I don't know how many days this person hasn't been cleaned up, but what was supposed to be a shiny black hair has developed oil knots, and upon closer inspection, there is still a layer of yellowish and sticky accumulation in the exposed hair seams. Upon a careful sniff, one could still smell the strange stench emanating from her body. A bit like pounding juice out of smelly socks and heather flowers that had been stuffy for 3 to 5 weeks. The only thing one could handle was the dirty and indelible facial features. Shen Tang argued with her in a good temper, "Madam, that's my cake. The woman seemed to be deaf, ignoring her and smashing her mouth, savoring the taste of the cake. Shen Tang noticed at this moment that the woman's sucked knuckles were a few degrees different from the other colors in her hands, and her throat spasmed uncontrollably and rolled around. She is not a cleanliness freak, but she experiences this visual impact up close and subconsciously experiences physiological discomfort. Yu Guang noticed a change in Shen Tang's expression. The woman was worried that this fool would go crazy and hit her, so her buttocks moved in the opposite direction. This is not bad, and even Shen Tang felt a tug. Looking down at the source of the pulling sensation at her waist. It was an extremely thick hemp rope, which seemed to tie several grasshoppers together, connecting her body with women and other disheveled and aged women. Looking up and looking around, all in sight were elderly, weak, and tired women and children dressed in coarse linen prison uniforms, both men and women. There are also about 10 young men who wear more uniform clothing, with a sword hanging around their waist, and are watching and marking people. Occasionally, a young female prisoner with a beautiful figure would pause for a while. Is it a big family who committed a crime and was taken to the execution ground to cancel their household registration? It is also possible that it is on the way to distribution. The difference is nothing more than whether it is premature death and premature birth or late death and delayed birth. Gulu 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 gulu, the hungry 5-organ temple began to haunt untimely, with a loud noise that could even be heard by others. Shen Tang raised her hand to cover her slightly cramped stomach, as hunger kept her salivating. The more you swallow saliva, the more pronounced your hunger becomes, to a degree that cannot be ignored. Shen Tang frowned in his heart and could only divert his hunger torment by diverting his attention. Within his sight, a prisoner was eating too quickly, and the cake was dry, choking. He kept pounding his chest, trying to let the cake stuck in his throat go down, and his face gradually turned blue. Everyone is not surprised when they see something strange. He didn't come forward to pat his back or pass the water. He struggled to climb towards the person dressed as an official and tried his best to extend his right hand for help, but it was not until he choked, and his right hand was powerless to fall. The latter had no intention of saving the person. He kicked 2 feet and found that the person was really choking, muttering, "Bad luck." Pulling out a dagger from his waist, he bent down and cut off the skin on the right side of the man's ear, then casually threw it into a dirty cloth bag. Shen Tang. It's time to hit the road. Hurry up. Get up, don't let me whip you. The prisoners put on heavy shackles again. The shackles of female prisoners are small, weighing about 35 pounds, while the shackles of male prisoners are more than one size larger, weighing less than 80 but also 50. The dozen or so well-dressed young men urged and kicked the unresponsive prisoners with their feet. If the kick doesn't get up yet, just put on the whip with great force, and when the whip goes down, there are bloodstains dripping 1 finger at a time, which is shocking. Shen Tang silently walked with her head buried, striving to search for memories related to her body. The result is unfortunate. Not only did she not get along with the basic living allowance of the time traveler, but she also had no memory of the original owner of her body. She was also robbed of her own home. Besides knowing her name was Shen Tang and having a pen name called Yoli, she relied on drawing to make a living, afraid of being urged by editors, and all other memories were blurred. Sneaking at the prisoners and the guards, the official sighed inwardly, "Unfortunately, this TM is already the beginning of hell, isn't it? It's really unlucky to open the door for his mother, unlucky to get home. No matter what the beginning is, life is the most important. Are you choosing to run away midway? Or choose to follow the team to the destination and then wait for an opportunity to escape?" At present, neither option is optimistic. Driving under the scorching sun, several prisoners fainted midway until the sunset darkened the sky before being allowed to rest overnight in place. Officials gather together to build a fire, take out dried meat from their luggage, cook it in a pottery jar, and sprinkle a little salt to make a pot of meat soup. Shen Tang reacted quickly this time and saved the cake. Sitting on the ground, chewing the hard and cold pancake carefully, softening it with saliva before swallowing it, and focusing on the official who was whispering. Although their casual conversations were scattered, they could barely piece together some intelligence. These prisoners belonged to the same family. Surnamed Gong, even the servants and maidservants of the entire clan were unable to escape and were all caught. Divided into 3 waves and escorted to the destination in batches. The man went to the border to serve as a laborer, while the woman was sent to the Xiaocheng education workshop. Shen Tang's team was in the second batch, mainly consisting of female relatives and maids from the Gong mansion, including the highest-ranking old feudal lord, several young ladies in their prime, young and beautiful concubines and aunts, and children of different ages. The rest were servants and maids who served them. She estimated that her body was either a maid or an heir. When you pinch your bone age, it looks like 11 or 12. The man's face is tattooed with calligraphy, while the woman's ink is behind her ear. If the prisoner is in the middle of the throat, he will cut off the written face or ear as evidence of the human head. She raised her hand and touched her ear, and indeed there was a scabbed blood clot behind her left ear. Shen Tang. Gone. The new book is on its way, and it's been a long time since I started seeking recommended tickets. 7.15, Depart Again. End of this chapter. Chapter 2002. What Broken Meteorite? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2002. What Broken Meteorite? The bright moon is dim, and the stars are sparse. The night is like a thick ink that is difficult to melt, lonely and deep. Criminals walked under scorching sun and shackles for a whole day, squeezing their bodies and minds to the limit. That small, rancid and stinky cake also became a delicacy in the world. After finishing eating, he lay down on the ground and soon began to snore one after another. Occasionally, he could also hear the explosive sound of the bonfire burning. The officials gathered around the campfire and took out their wine bags, drinking small drinks. The dried meat in the pottery jar has been cooked soft, then sprinkled with spices to catalyze a rich and domineering aroma. For this group of physically weak prisoners who haven't had a full meal for a long time, it has an almost fatal attraction. Shen Tang's ears were sharp as he heard the gurgling sound of other people's Adam's apple rolling and swallowing, as well as the rumbling sound of thunder in the 5 organs temple. He lowered his head and touched his own dry stomach, then lowered his eyes and sighed inwardly, she is also hungry. Do you want to drink? An official scooped a bowl of soup from a pottery jar, blew it cool, and was about to take a sip. Yu Guang noticed the eager gaze, either bright or dark, and his eyes rolled. He immediately glanced at it with ill intentions and smiled, this meat soup is very expensive. If you want to drink it, you have to exchange something. The criminals suddenly fell silent. Shen Tang lifted his eyelids upon hearing this, pursed the corners of his lips, and a hint of anger flashed through his dark eyes. Just because she has lost her memory doesn't mean she has become a fool. She understands what men mean. These are a group of female prisoners with an uncertain future who are about to be expelled from the academy. Even if they have hidden money, they have been looted. What else can they exchange for meat soup? The answer is about to come out. After the official finished speaking, his eyes lightly scanned the group of female prisoners, admiring their expressions of hesitation or sadness as if watching a play. Another official smiled and patted him on the back of the head. With a smile, he cursed, you don't need to pee and take care of yourself. Are you qualified to climb their beds? These are all the nobles of the Gong family. He deliberately dragged the word benefactor into a long and sophisticated manner. Noble person. What kind of noble person? The official rubbed the back of his head and deliberately increased his voice, shouting, someone who goes to the teaching workshop to serve noble people. That's right. The third official took advantage of his drunkenness to join in the fun. The teaching workshop is not a place where you can go for leisure with money. The brothers can't afford dirty silver. If one person can't afford it, they can gather together. If one person can't afford it, they can buy it for a night. If you can't afford it, they can buy it for a night. You come for half a stick of incense, I will come for half a stick of incense. Old San, who do you look down on? Who is half-burned incense and who is the grandson? Is there a difference between opening here or going to the teaching workshop before opening? Faced with such a great shame and humiliation, the male offender dared not speak out in anger, and the slightly attractive female offender was even more self-threatening, with a face full of dust. As they spoke more and more disrespectfully, the leading official could only come out to stop them. You guys all calm down a bit. It's even more outrageous. After the job is over, you can go to any school you like to find Huanyang to have fun. Why keep an eye on these guys? Get up and keep an eye on them. The orders from above are that any one of them has escaped, and everyone will have to go without food. The officials suddenly fell silent until one of them murmured softly. They had been shattered one by one in their literary heart and martial courage. What should they take to escape? Wenxin. Martial courage. Shen Tang keenly captures these two words. Without warning, a piercing pain that was so sharp that it could not be ignored came from deep within the mind. Listening to the official flattering the leader in a low voice, the official smiled obsequiously and said, "Gong, these criminals, no matter how prosperous they used to be, they are still in the past. Although our brothers are only the last-class nobles, you are a third-class hairpin." The other officials also said, "That's it, boss. These prisoners are either women or useless people who have been deposed. How can they escape? The last duke. Third-class hairpin curl. What is this thing again?" Shen Tang's eyebrows gathered together, his teeth clenched tightly, enduring intense and piercing pain. Unconsciously, his forehead was covered in fine cold sweat, and his face turned pale. Although she was very restrained, her restrained and trembling movements still alarmed the prisoners around her. The woman lifted her eyelids and glanced at Shen Tang. She saw her hand supporting her forehead with an unbearable expression of pain, snorting lightly at the tip of her nose, and turning her back. Grunt. Crazy. After an unknown amount of time, the piercing pain seemed to cross a critical point, with a loud roar and receded like a tide. Shen Tang panted lightly as if granted amnesty, his eyes hazy and dazed. As her mind regained clarity and her mind was filled with fragmented and unfamiliar memories, she closed her eyes and organized. 200 years ago, the world was about to settle, and the stars in the night fell like rain. There was a thief star that was particularly different, emitting a strange and dazzling purple light, rendering the entire sky. This meteorite shower not only turned the tide of war and made the hegemon, who was only one step away from reaching the summit, drink hatred, but also quickly changed the world. From then on, the group of dragons became leaderless, and warlords and feudal lords from all over supported and valued their troops. The world returned to a chaotic era, and then split into 100 countries and fought endlessly. The people were struggling to make a living, and at that moment someone discovered a wonderful change in their body. By practicing literature and martial arts, one can absorb the energy of heaven and earth and gather it in the Dan Mansion to refine oneself. The Dan Mansion is divided into civil and martial arts. If the chi of heaven and earth can be condensed into Dan, it becomes Wenxin and Wu Dan, each with its own unique strengths. As these people explored step by step, a systematic division gradually emerged. Wenxin is divided into 9 levels, and exports come true. There is something out of nothing, and arranging troops can lead to a decisive victory in conversation and laughter. There are 20 levels of bravery in martial arts. With one man in charge, 10,000 soldiers cannot escape. Even 1,000 soldiers and horses can kill 7 in and 7 out, causing people to turn upside down. Gongshi and Zanyao both belong to the category of martial bravery, with the lowest and third ranks respectively. The highest level of martial bravery is the 20th rank of Cheho. From the sky, there are only 3 warriors at the level of Cheho, all of whom are heroes who can lift the mountain's aura to the world, and the Optimus Prime who guards a country. Shen Tang sorted out these unfamiliar memories, and his expression gradually turned speechless. Because she had just guessed what level of literary or martial courage she was, even if she was deposed, she would still have better physical qualities than an ordinary person. Perhaps she could use it to escape. Unexpectedly, just as she had this idea, a small line of information jumped out of her mind, cutting off her extravagant hopes. She is a woman. In this world, a woman's body is like a bag with a broken mouth. Although she can perceive the energy of heaven and earth, she cannot gather in the Dan mansion, so she naturally does not have the so-called literary and martial courage. Shen Tang. Gone. Does that broken meteorite also engage in gender discrimination? As soon as he finished cursing in his heart, he heard the official's tone seriously beating his subordinates. What do you fools know? The official in charge was flattered, but he didn't forget himself. Gong's family was plagiarized, but not everyone was caught clean. It was said that there was also a 5th doctor on the run, and if he happens to. Third-class Zan Niao was able to beat them, a group of lower-class nobles, to the point where their father and mother couldn't find their way north. The 5th doctor belonged to the 9th class, and Zan Niao was also a grandfather beating his grandson. If that 5 doctors come to rob people, they may not even have time to escape their lives. Of course, this possibility is unlikely. Everyone understands and feels deeply at the same time. Because of this little incident, they had to put aside their lewd hearts and didn't dare to make mistakes. The silence around him was reduced to the chirping of insects, leaving Shen Tang feeling helpless. He keenly sensed the movement of the hemp rope around his waist, followed by the rolling sound of a small stone being thrown out. The official who heard the commotion walked over. Low drink warning. What are you doing? The woman who snatched Shen Tang's pancakes during the day swallowed her saliva and asked, "Do you still have meat soup at Lang Jun's place?" Shen Tang's eyebrows trembled as she slept. Seeking recommended tickets for female frequency A_. Angle _Shitake will mail the contract today, and it should be able to change to signed status next Monday. According to the Qin 20th level military merit title system, Wu Dan and others ranked from low to high as Gongshi, Shanzhao, Zanxiao, Bugeng, Dafu, Guanfu, Gongfu, Gongcheng, Wufu, Swa Shuchang, Right Shuchang, Swa Gung, Zhonggang, Yogang, Shaoshangzao, De Shangzao, Si Shuchang, De Shuchang, Guanihu, and Cheho. It's too long, it's troublesome to flip through notes. Please label it here for easy access. The division of Wenxin is derived from the 9th grade system, which is different from the upgrade of Wudan. Under normal circumstances, the level of Wenxin is fixed, which is the opening of blind boxes. The number of grades is the same as the number of grades angle _O. For updates, it's usually scheduled for 2 p.m. in the afternoon, with a normal 1-night shift and recommended double shifts. End of this chapter. Chapter 3003. Are you polite? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3003. Are you polite? The woman's words stunned the official for a moment. Immediately understood. One hand dishonestly touched the woman's delicate waist and looked up and down recklessly. Coincidentally, there was also a bowl left. Would you like to go and taste it, madam? The woman asked again, do you still have pancakes? The official pretended to be hesitant, but his hand lingered around the woman's waist. Taking advantage of the latter's attention, stop at the waist and forcefully pinch it. The woman let out a soft gasp from her mouth. The soft moan, like a feather tickling my heart, caused a fever in my ears and numbness in my coccyx. Hiss. The young lady's voice makes her soul fly. If she goes to the workshop, she can become the top player in a few days. The official relaxed his grip and said, as for cakes, it depends on how well the lady serves them. Although this woman is disheveled and still has a nauseating odor all over her body, the conditions on the way to hairdressing are difficult, and on hot days, who is not covered in a foul odor? In addition, this official has not touched a woman for a long time, and someone recommended a pillow that suits his taste. Thinking about this, he couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. No wonder colleagues enjoy the work of escorting female prisoners. Together, not only are they rewarded with abundant silver, but the work is also easy. There are also such erotic blessings on the way. Who knows? The woman raised her hand and covered the back of his hand, gently removing it from his puzzled gaze. What do you mean by this? The official was about to get angry, but the woman calmly said, I am already a woman who has given birth to a son and a daughter. In terms of color, how can I compare with those tender little girls? I'm worried about not being attentive and not being able to. As she spoke, her gaze turned toward Shen Tang. The official immediately understood and sneered, what a poisonous woman. She serves, and you drink soup and eat cakes. Lang Jun is unaware that this girl was raised by my family. You raised it. Judging from his expression, he clearly didn't believe it. How could a biological mother push her daughter into a man's arms and waste it for a bowl of meat soup or a cake? The previous gentleman was right. It's only a matter of time before we reach this point where we can enter the teaching workshop and be bullied. Instead of letting this girl have a clean and cheap body and leave a lifetime of regrets, it's better to ask the gentleman for a favor. If you're satisfied, she can also suffer less on the road. The woman sang, chanted, and beat, seemingly sincere and heartfelt, and unknowingly, people thought she was some kind mother. The official was dazed by these words. Is there such a wonderful thing? Not only did I enjoy the pleasure of being a good person, but I also did good deeds and accumulated negative virtues. Shen Tang. Are you polite? How did a woman with a bone age of at most 20 give birth to a daughter of 11 or 12? If you want to be a brothel and harm her, just speak up and even have the audacity to be her mother. I can't bear it at all. Unable to continue pretending, Shen Tang woke up slowly and looked at the woman with his black eyes hooked straight. The official's gaze wandered between the two. Why doesn't she get close to you? The woman said, this child was born with a brain disease, sometimes crazy and sometimes foolish, and has been carefully cared for. He is also born with delicate skin and flesh, and serving people is not a problem. Why is the surname Shen not Gong? Not all of these female prisoners can get their hands on them. Out of caution, the official glanced at the tattoo on Shen Tang's ear. Not surnamed Gong, and young in age, when you think about the list of prisoners, it should just be a maid. Unexpectedly, the woman followed closely and argued, she was the daughter of my family who was brought up with her deceased husband before being brought into the Gong mansion. Naturally, she followed her husband's surname. The main family thought of her loneliness and helplessness, so they showed kindness and allowed her to be brought into the mansion for upbringing. Official. Since she is not an important female offender, she will take it if she wants it. He chose Shen Tang. As for this woman, there is still a long way to go from Xiaocheng, and there are plenty of opportunities. He also kept his promise, really giving women a bowl of warm meat soup and a cake. I greeted my colleague on the night guard and took Shen Tang to the back of the small slope in the distance. The night was dark, and only a faint black shadow could be seen. The night watchman joked, after finishing work, let my brother be happy too. Don't think about eating alone. This is natural, no one can forget their brothers if they forget the benefits. Shen Tang's fingers hanging on his side curled up, and his thoughts became lively. If you refuse at this moment and provoke these officials, the situation may be irreparable. But if it's private, on the contrary, it is an excellent opportunity. A lowly nobleman is much easier to deal with than a group. Although there is no complete memory, intuition tells Shen Tang that the last duke is his younger brother. Her eyes twitched slightly, and she silently lowered her eyelids, trying to play the role of a mentally ill idiot. When Shen Tang was taken away, the woman was gulping down meat soup when she lifted her head and happened to bump into a pair of deep and dark eyes, as if she wanted to see through her soul at a glance, leaving her nowhere to hide. The woman was seen to explode with sweat. Crazy, he cursed softly. Behind the small slope is a wild grassland, with grass as high as human waist, dense and hot. Because Shen Tang was born with a brain disease, even the officials were not afraid that she would run. Half kneeling on the ground, looking anxious, he lowered his head to untie his waistband. Ah! There seemed to be a dark shadow swaying in front of me, and before the official could react, his neck was tightly strangled by a thick hemp rope from front to back. Raid! How could he, unprepared, think that Shen Tang would suddenly make a fuss? But even if he's not doing well, he's still a lowly warrior. It's not easy to deal with a female criminal who's trying to escape. Immediately activate the martial courage. Both arms expand visibly several times, with muscles as hard as rocks and filled with explosive force. This force is as strong as 5 stones, capable of easily smashing her head, twisting her hands and feet, and crushing her bones all over her body. The official effortlessly broke the thick hemp rope and made a side attack, lightning fast as lightning, preparing to capture Shen Tang. However, Shen Tang's punch was faster, almost bringing out remnants, fast, fierce, and accurate, hitting him directly on the chin, with a faint sound of water shaking in his mind. Seizing the gap, Shen Tang forcefully suppressed himself, imprisoning his wrist with his backhand and choking him to death with his other hand, roaring angrily in his throat. Click, 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 there was no hesitation in taking action. 2 bone-cracking sounds sounded almost simultaneously. Shen Tang. Watching the official with his head tilted at a strange angle and her mind relaxed, there was a moment of unreality in her. The last Duke, is that all? Is that all? She flipped over and crawled to the side. This. I can't help but fight. Although it took advantage of the surprise attack, it was somewhat overwhelming. At this point, she had no time to think too much. Seize the time to search for valuable things and food on the official's body, and flee in the opposite direction. Getting out is important. Once caught up, there were only 2 paths left in front of her. Either she can take out all the official positions alone, including the third-class hairpin who doesn't know the depth, and her intuition tells her that this path is not very optimistic. Either she was beaten, disabled, and taken back, waiting for her fate, afraid it would be more difficult to live than to die. As for that woman, go back and find an opportunity to visit Xiaocheng Jiaofang and come knocking on your door. Shen Tang gritted his teeth and ran wildly in one direction, not even caring about the crushed stones on the ground and the soles of his feet. Whoever thought, she escaped without half a stick of incense, and behind her there was a faint sound of hooves, still approaching rapidly. The sound of horse hooves. Wait, there are no horses or carriages in the distribution team. How did the sound of horse hooves come about? Before thinking about whether it was an enemy or a passer-by, a strong sense of crisis spread from the vest to the whole body. Shen Tang went to the right without thinking and rolled old dager, glutinous rice rolls with sweet bean flour. As soon as she stood still, she saw an arrow deep into her just position. Looking in the direction of the arrows flying towards him, there was a prominent official leader riding a horse with a murderous expression on his face. Shen Tang. Gone. Seeking a recommendation ticket epsilon=Omicron**, alas, end of this chapter. Chapter 4004. Theological Coffin Nails. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4004. Theological Coffin Nails. Why are you the only one guarding the night? The official leader returned from a patrol and found that there was one less subordinate standing guard at night. He, a female prisoner, is looking for him. He's currently in the gentle countryside. Subordinates point in the direction of Xiaopa and show their superiors with a furrowed expression. This kind of thing is not uncommon on the distribution road. Prisoners who want to endure less hardship either have someone named to take care of them or have relatives give money to take care of them. If they don't have either, they can only use their own bodies as capital to bribe officials. Gong's family was plagiarized and sent out, making it difficult for his former colleagues and students to protect themselves. How could they have the energy to take care of him? The female offender only has one way left. Otherwise, it's a good job. The official leader naturally knows this hidden rule. How long has he been there? It's only a while. Humph, absent from duty without permission. However, at that kid's pace, it's almost time to end. He's fast and won't take much time. Upon hearing these words, the official leader moved his lips as if he wanted to laugh and forced himself to endure, pretending to be serious and making a face. Tell him when he comes back. Add another hour to the vigil. After waiting for a while, no one came back. Can that kid really find useful folk remedies to cure his hidden illness? The official couldn't sit still, watching the prisoners sleeping soundly like dead pigs, and not afraid that they would take the opportunity to escape. He quietly got up and followed Shen Tang and the others. Listen to the news, if they are almost finished, I can just go on a rotation. Until he approached Xiaopa, he vaguely had an ominous premonition. The movement here is too abnormal. There are no breaths that make people's ears hot, nor beats that excite their spirits. All they have is a noisy ensemble of insect chirping and the night breeze blowing wild grass. Old Zhou. Old Zhou, where are you? He suppressed the unease and quickly stepped forward to brush away the dense wild grass, calling out the names of his colleagues. The sound came to a sudden halt. He lowered his head to look at what he had stepped on, one arm. Through the dim night, he barely recognized the eerie twisted male corpse with his neck as the old Zhou in his mouth. Dead, dead. His exclamation attracted the officials and leaders. The person has already died, but the body is warm and soft like a living person, not much cold, indicating that it has not been dead for a while. The official leader checked the twisted neck and wrist again, and the evidence showed that they were instantly pinched by someone. Their finger and hand strength were extremely terrifying. However, if the corpse had traces of martial courage but did not even show a decent resistance, it was taken away, and the killer's strength must be higher than that of the last-class nobles. What about the female prisoner? Has her body been found? Seeing the body cleaned up, what did the official leader think of? The subordinate replied, No, I didn't notice her, only Lao Zhou. Official leader. Is the person dead and the female offender missing? Someone is robbing prisoners. His face turned black as he guessed. You go back and keep an eye on those criminals. If there are any suspicious people, just kill them. Yes. The official leader followed the traces left by Shen Tang and chased after him, only to see the blurry figures running in the darkness in no time. He plucked his bow and drew an arrow without hesitation. The arrow left the string and shot toward Shen Tang's vest. There is no doubt that this arrow will kill a female offender. Unexpectedly, the female prisoner seemed to have eyes behind her, rolling to the right as the arrow was about to hit, narrowly avoiding it. I didn't expect you to be such a leaky fish. He drove the horse over Shen Tang's head, tightened the reins, and the horse's hooves stood steadily, blocking her way. He said coldly, with the help of boys and girls, you can sneak into the female criminal and then take the opportunity to escape. Gong thief has a good plan. The male Gong family prisoner who was robbed of his home was deposed from the Dan mansion regardless of age. Firstly, to prevent criminals from having the ability to escape, and secondly, to prevent them from seeking revenge in the future. The prisoner in front of him was alone and had no one to respond to. It should be Shen Tang, who used his appearance as bait to lure him out, and then took advantage of his mental relaxation to launch a surprise attack and kill him. No matter how lax the last duke is, she cannot be killed instantly by a woman. Looking at her wound, it is determined that this person must have a literary or martial spirit. Given that it is impossible for a woman to exist, then the female offender in front of her is naturally a man. A male criminal who has been in the female criminal team for so long without being discovered, there is no need to guess. It must be Gong's criminal who sheltered each other and protected him. In summary, this person holds a significant position and weight in the Gong family. How can he return to hand over the task after such an important fish that has escaped the net? In the blink of an eye, the brain came up with a logical inference. Shen Tang got up from the ground. Pooh, spit out the sand and dirt that was stuck at the corner of my mouth. I happened to hear what the official leader said. What does it mean that she borrowed the convenience of a boy or a girl? Still calling her Gong thief. Don't bully her. She doesn't have any memory at the moment, just add someone else to her casually. Oh, what do you want? After Shen Tang finished speaking, she accidentally tugged at the wound on her cheek, and the delicate stabbing pain made her gasp for air. She had just dodged too hastily, and her cheeks were sore from the gravel on the ground, so hot that she knew it was bleeding without touching it. Her gaze remained fixed on the enemy. Come back with me and save your dog's life. Shen Tang was amused by these words and said, leave me with my dog's life. I think you're talking nonsense. He looks quite ugly, but he thinks so beautifully. Since we can't reach an agreement, then the official leader remained calm and focused, with a hint of killing intent flashing in his eyes. Spears, swords, halberds, bows, crossbows, spears. Kill. Shen Tang. Ha. What does it mean? What are you thinking, Wen Buting? As soon as the question came to mind, the next second I saw the long bow in the hands of the official leader turning into a cross-shaped spear. The long halberd was nearly a foot long, and the tip of the cold gun from Mori aimed straight at her vital point, without any mention of martial arts. Shen Tang was startled by this incident, tilted his head back, and dodged the fatal blow. Weapons are 1 inch long and 1 inch strong. The strange long halberd, which was nearly 1 zhang long, was in the hands of the official leader and was dancing with a dense gun shadow that did not leak any water. It was either struck horizontally or stabbed directly, as if commanded by the arm, while Shen Tang was unarmed. In this situation, not to mention running for life, it's just being a living target for people. Even if you're tired, you can die. As for the setting where science is nailed to death in the coffin by turning weapons out after just 2 sentences, she knows exactly how the horse under this scumbag got here. Can this world be even more unscientific? Puff. The tip of the long spear rubbed against her left arm and plunged straight into the soil, making her scalp tingle. If her reaction had been slower just now, this direct stab would definitely have pierced through her heart. Spears, swords, halberds, bows and crossbows. With her life hanging on the line, she dodged and used her dead horse as a living horse doctor to see if she could transform into a weapon. Although women in this world cannot cultivate martial courage and literary heart, why can't she be an exception? As a time traveler, when encountering hell at the beginning, should we give her the basic guarantee? Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by a long spear stabbed in. The official leader mocked and said, "You ants are beyond your measure." Shen Tang. In my memory, it seems that no one else besides the editor could make her so frustrated. When the long halberd thrust again, she grabbed the tip of the gun with her bare hands in anger and pulled it angrily. Enough, no. Nameless anger churned and burned in the chest, flipping back and forth a sudden passage of text. Her intuition told her that this passage may be the key to breaking the game. The content is like this: sword in mother's hand. Seeking recommended ticket duck. End of this chapter. Chapter 5005. Benefits for late newcomers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5005. Benefits for late newcomers, in the hands of a kind and loving mother. A sword. Shen Tang is confused. Are you sure it's a sword or a thread? Also, the second half of the sentence actually says, chop on the wanderer's body. This kind mother is poisonous. If the first sentence is understandable. After all, even a kind-hearted mother would be forced to vent her anger when encountering a mischievous mother's son, otherwise why would filial sons emerge from under a stick? But the following sentence can simply shock her for a whole year. In 1 second and 18 strokes, the sword strikes a critical strike. Shen Tang's first reaction was, has Uz cooled down? Can this kind of unorthodox horror literature really break through? She has doubts about her intuition. Equally outrageous was the official leader who was forcibly pulled off his horse by Shen Tang. He was actually forcibly pulled off his warhorse by an exiled prisoner in his early teens. At the same time, it also gave birth to a true killing heart. If you don't kill the gong thief today, it will be a future danger. Adhering to the principle of not moving like a mountain, moving like thunder, he suddenly exerted force on his arm, withdrew the tip of the gun he had held, and then thrust out again with lightning speed, targeting Shen Tang's left eye. Who knows, the expected piercing of the gun tip into the skull did not occur, and he encountered a resistance that could almost numb his tiger's mouth along the way. Zheng. The tip of the spear is against the body of the sword, which is a simple and rustic ancient sword with a snowy body, faintly emitting the sound of dragons and tigers howling. And the person holding the sword is Shen Tang. Seeing this scene, the official leader's pupils trembled slightly. The two of them struggled and remained in a stalemate. This also gave Shen Tang some breathing time. At this time, I don't know whether to use it to roast that the sword in the hands of a loving mother can actually turn into a sword, or to pity myself for taking the blade with bare hands. As a painter who loves his career, in her heart, her hands are definitely more important than her brain. Just now, I couldn't control my anger and used my precious right hand to pick up the tip of the gun with bare hands. Fortunately, I didn't hurt my bones and muscles. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to afford a paintbrush for my whole life. What fun is there in this life? And the person in front of her who injured her right hand, Shen Tang's eyes were cold and heavy. Today, let her be a kind mother and teach this overage child a good lesson. Just as the two of them were deadlocked, Shen Tang made a mistake in his footsteps and his snowy sword brushed against his long spear, instantly bringing him closer. At the same time, he silently recited the last sentence that was insane in his mouth. In 1 second and 18 strokes, the sword strikes a critical strike. At the moment she drew her sword, an invisible but powerful force converged from the Dan mansion to her right hand, not only making the heavy long sword in her hand as light as a feather, but also equipping her arms with 18 supermotors, leaving behind remnants of her sword every time she drew it. It is indeed a critical strike from the sword. Originally, only one sword could be used, but now 18 swords can be used, each sword hitting the vital points. The sword shadow and sword light interweave into a web. In theory, this can turn the heads of officials and officials into hedgehogs, but this world is so devoid of morality and science. He crossed his arms in front of him, using a condensed black metal wrist guard, and forcefully shouldered 18 swords. No damage. No, it cannot be said that it is completely unscathed. At least she picked out his hair crown and bun. Seeing this scene, Shen Tang almost cursed loudly. Can this world still be good? The third-class hairpin curl is so tricky, isn't it, that the 20-class Cheho wants to soar in place. The official leader's expression became more focused, and his eyebrows became more solemn. When Shen Tang's speed slowed down slightly, he waited for the opportunity to strike and punched a red fist shadow. Shen Tang dodged in time, and the fist shadow hit the ground and exploded into a big pit. The flying sand blocked her view. When she saw it again, a snowy and bright big knife struck her head. We had to fight back with our swords, bending our knees slightly under immense pressure, sinking our center of gravity, and forcefully taking on this knife. The clanging sound of swords and knives striking each other is deafening and auditory. The official leader said, "I underestimated you." With a fierce momentum, pressing step by step. After a series of entanglements, both sides consumed a lot, and he did not capture the prisoner. Shen Tang's breath was slightly chaotic, and a thin layer of sweat seeped out of his forehead unconsciously. It should be noted that the strength of the third-class hairpin curl is 2 or 3 times that of the last-class nobleman. The official leader tried his best every time he swung his sword, rushing to chop her in half. She suspected that her arm was hovering on the edge of being scrapped. Due to the severe pain, her mood was particularly unhappy. "Humph, it's clear that I overestimated you." "No, it's just not possible." "Why pretend to say something like, 'I underestimated you,' show off your eloquence." However, here we go. The official leader was not affected by Shen Tang's provocation. He put away his angry expression and quickly approached with his sword, but stopped in front of the latter with a thick eyebrow curled up. Drinking loudly towards the empty land. "Who is it? Come out." Shen Tang was shocked at the words and his back was cold. "Is there anyone else nearby?" At this moment, a low magnetic male voice rolled into her ear. The person said calmly, "If your teeth are strong, you will lose them first, and if your tongue is soft, you will retain them. Flexibility can overcome hardness and weakness triumphs over strength." The official leader turned pale after listening. As the words fell, Shen Tang unfolded a black and white intertwined calligraphy in painting under her feet, and the words flew out, one by one sinking into her body. "In a moment, resurrect with full blood. The arms no longer hurt, the breath no longer chaotic, and all the energy expended has returned." No, there's nothing more than that. She had a premonition that if she drew the sword again, it would not be 18 strokes, but 30.6 strokes. This is obviously a friendly party. Is it difficult to say that this is the late arrival of the benefits for novice travelers? Watching Shen Tang's breath quickly recover, the official leader's thoughts of cursing his mother all came to mind. Almost gritting his teeth, grinding his posterior groove teeth. Obstruction of official duties shall be punished. The man joked, "Then why don't you kill one and let me take a look?" The official leader still refused to give up and said, "The Gong family has gone against their will, and you are not afraid to cause trouble by being with the Gong thieves. I know better than you why Gong's family was raided and wiped out. It's still unknown who the thief is." Upon hearing this, the official leader knew that he had no chance and continued to entangle. He was likely to face the collaboration between Shen Tang and the secret man. At that time, his life would rest. He had no choice but to drag his sword and retreat in front of Shen Tang, retreating 3 to 5 zhang before reluctantly riding away. Almost at the same time, the calligraphy and paintings under Shen Tang's feet scattered. With its disappearance, Shen Tang, who had just been treated with chicken blood, returned to her previous state. Shen Tang. Is the experience period of this buff too short? The crisis was resolved, and she sat on the ground adjusting her breathing, looking at her hands incredulously. She was able to hold on to the newbie protection benefits at the beginning of hell, and even saved a small life. If you don't die in a great disaster, there will always be good fortune. Wiping away the hot sweat casually, Shen Tang looked up and saw a young man with a thin figure and green lips emerge from behind the tree. Quickly getting up and thanking the humanitarian, "Thank you very much, sir, for saving your life." The young man looked at Shen Tang and squinted his eyes for a moment before saying in a low voice, "Thank you for letting me go. If it weren't for him discovering my whereabouts and shouting, 'Just because you are the male heir of the Gong family, I wouldn't want to save anyone, and even want to kill you.'" Shen Tang. The smile at the corners of the mouth gradually solidified. Just emerged from the tiger's den and entered the wolf's den again. Request for recommendation ticket _ Angle _ end of this chapter. Chapter 6006. The National Seal, Speech and Spirit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6006. The National Seal, Speech and Spirit. Shen Tang remained calm and looked straight at the young man with a calm expression. Ask him, sir, do you have a grudge against the Gong family? Unexpectedly, the young man's answer exceeded her expectations. I saw the young man with his hands clasped in his sleeves, half leaning against the trunk of the tree, slightly drooping his eyelids, and saying in a faint voice, no grudges. Shen Tang. Why did you join in the fun without any grudges? Do you still want to kill Gong's male heir when you encounter him? Perhaps Shen Tang's gaze was too indescribable, and the young man was looked at with displeasure. What kind of gaze are you giving? Nature is looking at the medical records of patients in mental hospitals. Shen Tang roast in his heart, but said on his lips. Since there is no revenge, where did you come from so malicious? The young man smiled and said, you are the son of the Gong family. How could you not know? Shen Tang. I said not to add strange character designs to her. She took a long breath and slowly exhaled the turbid air in her chest, pulling out a kind and approachable smile. I will deeply appreciate your life-saving kindness, sir. However, there are a few things I hope you will know. You say. Firstly, I am not a descendant of the Gong family. After speaking, Shen Tang saw a hint of displeasure in the young man's eyes. She continued, regardless of whether the young man believed it or not. Secondly, I am not sure about the gentleman's malice. Thirdly, I am not a male descendant of the Gong family. Clearly a genuine woman. Although I am still young and my body has not started to develop, and there are no obvious secondary sexual characteristics, just looking at this face alone will not mistake gender. The young man carefully scrutinized Shen Tang's face and looked into her eyes, seemingly carefully weighing the authenticity of the words. After a while, he nodded and said, I believe what you said, young man. Shen Tang. Believe me, der. I said it's not a man. Why is this guy so promiscuous? Does she have to take off her pants and take out something to believe it? The young man joked, although his skills are decent, such an abuse of literary skills and indiscriminate beating does not seem like he has received proper education. No serious scholar would confront a warrior head-on. Considering that there were not only Gong's children among the inmates who were assigned this time, he speculated that this young man may be one of the surnames, who, thanks to the blessings of a male and female prime minister, was returned to the female family. Only then did the Dan mansion survive and not be abolished. Shen Tang. For a while, I didn't know where to roast, but I had time to grasp one important point. Are you saying Wenxin? Do I have Wenxin? Does this body carry a literary heart? Scratch your hands. She has seen a bit of the treatment that a traveler should have. You actually don't know. Seeing that her expression didn't seem to be fake, the young man was surprised now. Shen Tang shook his head sincerely. She has not traveled to this world for 24 hours yet. Not only did she have no memory of the original owner, but she also had her home stolen. Where did she know about this? The young man asked, since I don't know I have a literary heart, what's wrong with my words just now? What is Yanling? Again. It's the scene of a loving mother wielding a sword, a wandering son chopping on his body, your literary and spiritual expression. The young man spoke and furrowed his brows, his expression very strange. The kind mother who struck her son with a sword may not sound serious, but the world is full of wonders, perhaps he has too little knowledge. Shen Tang said truthfully. I was thinking of a way to save my life, and suddenly it appeared in my mind. Youth. This is outrageous. Shen Tang turned the topic back. Sir, why do you dislike Gong so much? If a problem is not solved, it's like eating a melon without any follow-up, and the feeling of scratching the heart and lungs is not pleasant. The young man glanced at Shen Tang and said expressionlessly, although there is no personal grudge, there is a hatred of losing the country. Upon hearing these words, Shen Tang's heart immediately stopped eating melons. This is not just for fun. If you accidentally provoke someone, you may want to fight her hard. But I don't know that nowadays, there are hundreds of countries standing tall, and various countries are constantly conquering. Destroying and building a country is a common practice. If a generation lives long, each person can change their nationality to 2 or more. Youth have feelings for their homeland, but they are not deep enough. So, what about Yanling? Shen Tang is not surprised, he directly treats young people as free explanation NPCs. Why run around to inquire if you can get the answer from him? White prostitution, who doesn't like it? Youth. He repeatedly confirmed that Shen Tang really didn't know anything, and the questions he asked were very basic, so answering 1 or 2 would be fine. The problem is so basic that people suspect that she is a wild man who emerged from a corner of the mountain, and the young man has to start from the source. His story is much more complete than the unfamiliar memories that come to mind in Shen Tang's mind. The fallen thief star was scattered in all directions in the Central Plains, and people were busy practicing literature and martial arts to absorb the energy of heaven and earth, refining their own bodies. Apart from the vendors who hoped for rare goods to live in, no one paid attention to it. Until a craftsman carved one of the broken stones from the thief star into a seal and presented it to the ruler. As soon as the ruler received the seal, a purple light burst forth, and countless strange words floated out of the seal, some of which merged with the official Dan mansion. At this moment it was discovered that certain words in the seal, combined with specific literary and martial arts skills, could exert incredible power. These words are the essence of speech. For example, the young man's previous saying, "Teeth are firm but lose first, tongue is soft and then survive, softness can overcome hardness and weakness wins strength," is to bless and restore one side of the opposing team, and the same words have different effects in different hands. Since then, the thief star fragments have become a standard accessory for national seals of various countries. The language and spirit contained in the national seal directly affect the strength of the country. If the monarch urges the national seal, it can also turn it into a vital weapon of the country, guarding the border of national development. At this point, the young man paused and glanced at Shen Tang's expression with his spare light. He said in a low voice, "The capital of Chongtai has been destroyed, and the national seal has been lost. There are rumors in the market that the Gong family hid and embezzled it. However, after Gong's family was stolen, the whereabouts of the national seal have not been found." Shen Tang didn't care about the national seal, but heavy platform. Her voice fell, and the young man's expression was quite exciting and complex. It's the original state of Xin, and there are rumors that it will be changed to Chongtai. He thought Shen Tang's question was due to the lack of information on the road of exile. He didn't know that the current Chongtai was Xiangua, but he didn't know that she simply thought the name was a bit strange. Destroying the country and changing people's names. What operation is this? The young man said, "For shame." Shame. Those who serve as maids are commonly referred to as Chongtai, which is a great shame and disgrace for the descendants of the state of Xin. What is anyone who is a servant of a servant? In layman's terms, it is the servant of a servant, the lower of the lower class. How could Gong, one of the criminals of the fallen country, not be hated? As long as the national seal does not appear, this controversy will not stop. These are just interesting to listen to. It has nothing to do with Shen Tang. She is more concerned about what her literary style looks like. The young man suggested, "Why not take a test? When Xin Jiupin, only by knowing the specific when Xin rank can one find the right language and spirit for oneself." Shen Tang. How to measure. Yesterday it was changed to assigned status, please request a recommended ticket, end of this chapter. Chapter 7007. Wenxin Monogram. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7007. Wenxin Monogram. The young man reached out his right hand to Shen Tang, with his palm facing upwards. Shen Tang hesitated for a moment and put his right hand on it, tilting his head to ask him. So. The young man looked at her with an indifferent expression, his gaze indescribable, as if asking her, "What do you think?" So Shen Tang withdrew his right hand as if he had been electrocuted. "Concentrate your energy in the palm of your hand." The young man still looked confused when he saw Shen Tang, so he had to speak up and give some advice. He thought he spoke clearly enough, but Shen Tang didn't even know what qi was. Seeing that Shen Tang remained motionless for a while, he could only say, "When you were using the spirit of speech just now, did you feel something wandering outward along the meridians from the Dan mansion? That's qi. Now try to pull it out of the Dan mansion and gather it in your palm. Will this happen?" Words and spirits are not something that can succeed every time, as it involves a matter of proficiency. The young man in front of me can forcefully resist the third-grade hairpin curl with a literary heart, and his eloquence effect is strong. He shouldn't be ignorant of anything. The young man spoke clearly, and Shen Tang carefully recalled the mysterious and strange feeling before. Qi, Dan Fu, Yen Ling, when Xian after a while, she vaguely caught something and guided it slowly towards the palm of her hand. Finally, a colorless air mass gradually formed, expanding from the size of a pea to the size of a fist, suspended 1 inch in the palm of the hand. Shen Tang looked up at the young man and asked, "Sir, is this qi? It's really amazing. What level of literary heart am I?" Since the appearance of this aura, the young man has lowered his eyes slightly, and most of his face is hidden in the shadow. His expression is not very clear, but Shen Tang is sure that the latter's gaze falls on the palm of her hand. She felt that the atmosphere was not quite right, so she spoke up again to inquire. The young man finally regained his senses and gave a response. "You can refine and solidify this qi again, just like me." As he spoke, the young man's outstretched right hand quickly conjured up a light blue cyclone, which looked like a thin mist at first glance, but 2 breaths transformed into a sticky, deep blue. Finally, under the gaze of Shen Tang, it transformed into a baby fist-sized, uniquely shaped deep blue monogram. Seeing Shen Tang's curiosity, the young man took the initiative to hand over the monogram. The floral design is exquisite, with the side engraved with the seal script 6th grade middle and lower, and the bottom engraved with the same handwriting, Qi Shi Yuan Liang. Your name is Qi Yuan Liang. If this is a name, then the 6th grade or lower should be his literary level. The young man said, "Pray for a good name with good characters." Staring into Shen Tang's eyes while speaking. The latter's eyes were clean and there was no hint of disdain for the lower and middle-level literary heart. They were slightly satisfied, and their expression seemed less distant. Shen Tang habitually said, "That's really a good name. It's both good and good, it seems like a good person." After praying for goodness, he fell silent. Shen Tang handed back the flower token. "I probably know what to do now. Learn to demonstrate the method of praying for goodness and compress the cyclone inward." The cyclone gradually transforms from colorless to milky white gel, and then from milky white gel to transparent, crystal-like small objects. Shen Tang finally calmed down and hurriedly went to look at the side of the monogram. Result: "Oh, why aren't there any characters? No words." That's what he said, but Qi Shan's voice didn't sound surprised, as if he had already anticipated it. Shen Tang handed out his own monogram and said in confusion, "There are indeed no characters on the side, only characters on the bottom. A seal script with neat lines and round strokes engraved at the bottom, Shen's young pair." Shen. Young. Pair. Are you really not a descendant of the Gong family? Because the monogram is transparent, it was a bit difficult to recognize the characters on it. Qi Shan squinted his eyes slightly and commented while looking at the bottom of the characters, "However, young man, your handwriting is too delicate. At first glance, I thought it was a woman's maiden name." Shen Tang. She has given up explaining that she is a girl. Since the world assumes that having a literary heart is a man, she jumps out to defend herself, regardless of whether others believe it or not, it is of no benefit. Misunderstanding leads to misunderstanding. Let her figure out why she has a literary heart or strong enough strength before speaking, so as not to be treated as a heretic and killed. Mr. Qi, my name is Shen Tang. The leaves of the Tang pear fall into a rosy color, and the buckwheat flowers bloom with a white snow fragrance. Qi Shan smiled lightly and said, it's also a good name. Shen Tang. Although she really wants to say her name is Shen Tang, Yoli is a random pen name with no special meaning. However, if someone thinks so, Xiao can't pour cold water on the ink in his stomach and can only receive praise. What she is most concerned about at this moment is what her literary level is. Mr. Qi, what level of Wenxin am I of? Who knew that Qi Shan asked her in return, what kind of thing do you think? Shen Tang. What does this mean? Qi Shan talked directly about something else. Unlike the 20th grade of Wudong, Wenxin only has a 9th grade. The first grade is superior, the second grade is superior to the middle, and the third grade is superior to the 9th grade. Wudong can be honed and promoted, and those with high talents can even rank among marquises. However, Wenxin is born with a few grades, which is the 6th grade. I have a lower grade Wenxin, which is more than what is higher than what is lower. So, what grade do you hope you have? Shen Tang was surprised and said, is this? What else can I think? Qi Shandao said, if it were someone else, it wouldn't work, but if you meet me, I can help you with this favor. Shen Tang was completely confused. Intuition tells her that there is something to be said in prayer. But they didn't explain much, only hinted in a low voice. It's not a good thing for a child to have a daughter in the bustling city. Shen Tang instinctively tightened his nerves. What is this Wenxin, how serious is it? The welfare of this interloper will also bring about fatal consequences. Shen Tang also suppressed his curiosity about being able to kill cats and didn't delve deeper. He just asked, how many levels of literary heart can be disguised? Qi Shan himself is a 6th grade lower middle literary mind, and his literary mind cannot be changed. He is born with only a few grades, so he definitely cannot help people truly change the level of his literary mind. That's all he has left. Since that's the case, Shen Tang probed and said, is it okay to have a top-notch 1st grade? Qi Shan was almost asked to laugh by her. The literary heart of the top tier is a saint's product, but it is a virtual product that only the vassals holding the national seal can possess. Are you looking for death? Shen Tang lowered his eyes and glanced at his literary monogram. Then be more cautious and disguise yourself as a 9th grade lower level. Under the 9th grade. Oh, you're actually smart. When 4 seal scripts of the 9th grade appeared on the side of the monogram, Shen Tang played with this transparent monogram and didn't know what to do. How can I take this thing back? What to take it back for? It's used to prove one's identity, even if it's a 9th grade lower level person with better literary skills than ordinary people. In this chaotic era where a generation can change 2 nationalities, the lives of ordinary people are worse than ordinary people, let alone Shen Tang, who is still a prisoner sent to flee. The characters engraved behind the ear are made by special means, and they will never be removed unless the ear is cut off. But with a heartfelt monogram and covered with earrings, the general staff would not dare to inspect it, which is equivalent to ensuring safety. A monogram is a seal. I'm looking for a recommendation ticket. I finished writing it last night and got confused. It's already 2 o'clock on time. Just scrolled through the comments and found out there were no new chapters, only then did I realize that there was an error, con_.ps. Thank you to the cute protagonist Gao Mei for becoming the first cute protagonist. Today there will be a second update. End of this chapter. Chapter 8008. People cannot be judged by their appearance, thanks to the cute main force Gao Mei+1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8008. People cannot be judged by their appearance, thanks to the cute main force Gao Mei+1, that. Mr. Qi. Shen Tang hesitated to speak. Qi Shan lifted his eyelids and said in a low voice, "If you have anything to say, just say it directly. I don't like people who beat around the bush or are not happy. So let me put it bluntly. Mr. Qi, if it's convenient. Can you let me follow for a few days?" Shen Tang seemed a bit embarrassed. "I know that my identity as a fugitive will cause trouble. I shouldn't have bothered you, sir, but I'm not familiar with my place and I really don't know what to do." Qi Shan is able to flexibly apply his literary skills. Isn't it a shame not to seize such a great opportunity to attend extracurricular tutoring classes for free? The opportunity is rare. Missing this village doesn't have this shop. If we can learn more about Wenxin, we can better integrate into this unfamiliar world in the future. Shen Tang made full use of his young age and poor external conditions to show weakness and try to inspire empathy in others. Qi Shan did not show any mercy in his eyes. He just looked at this innocent young man with a drooping head, seemingly pitiful, with great interest. A cute and inexperienced newbie who controls his literary mind and dares to confront him with a stiff third-class hairpin without falling behind. Where is a destitute little puppy? Clearly a wolf-dog cub with sharp teeth and biting eyes. Although the fangs are still tender, once you have the confidence, they will eat people. Show weakness to others. This trick is good for deceiving others, but it's not enough to deal with him. Qi Shan lowered his eyelids and played with the deep blue tattoo hanging on his waist as he wore it. After pondering for a long time, he said, "It's not impossible, but if you go to the next town, you'll have to separate, otherwise you'll regret it." Shen Tang was surprised and asked him, "Regret? Why?" Qi Shan pointed to his sword at his waist and asked, "Guess if this sword is a decoration or a handy weapon." Shen Tang. Qi Shan smiled and said, "Little Lang, don't think that someone helping you once is a good person. The trouble I have is much greater than that of you, a fugitive. It's not just me. In the future, if you see anyone who dares to walk alone outside, whether wearing a Wenxin flower emblem or a Wu Dan tiger talisman, be cautious." Shen Tang blinked and murmured in a low voice that could be heard by Qi Shan. "Mr. Qi may have seen me as too simplistic. With a kind heart, I sneer. This young man is indeed not innocent, but Shen Tang's demands are not excessive. Just following along. Anyway, I have already helped once, why not help again? Quan should be sending the Buddha to the west and making personal connections." The two of them built a bonfire on the leeward side. Qi Shan rested with his sword in his hands, but before he could even get sleepy, he heard Shen Tang's stomach rumbling. He looked at the latter with his eyes wide open. Shen Tang covered his stomach and awkwardly smiled, "Walking in shackles for 7 or 8 hours during the day, I only ate one spoiled cake, which made an indecent sound. Excuse me, sir, I'm sleeping well." Shen Tang's 5 organs temple is bustling incessantly, and he can't pretend not to hear it. So he took off the water bag and dry food bag from his waist and handed them over. "I ate the mat first." Shen Tang was not polite to anyone either. "Thank you very much. Wait for the slightly cool and soft dry food to slide into your throat, roll into your stomach, and the intense burning hunger will be slightly relieved." Despite being starving, she only ate half of it and remained motionless. Qi Shan was a bit surprised, but didn't say anything. Because of this episode, he also lost his sleep and took out a scroll made of animal hide and nitrate from his backpack, reading it carefully over the campfire. Shen Tang vaguely saw the words, "Yanling," on it, which aroused his curiosity and seemed to reveal the essence. Qi Shan was stared at by her curious and bright eyes, unable to concentrate. He sighed slightly and said, "Curiosity." Shen Tang hugged his knees with both hands and smiled awkwardly, Curious. Wenxin is really amazing, sir may teach me." Qi Shan said, you're really not polite. Isn't it that the gentleman said you don't like people who are roundabout and unpleasant? Prayer for goodness. He didn't preach to anyone either. However, the scroll in his hand was not a rare object, but rather some well-known ordinary words and spirits that he had compiled. It was a compulsory course for strategists, and Shen Tang gradually came into contact with it when he went to a slightly larger town bookstore or some academy to study. Furthermore, speaking is a very conscious thing, and most of it belongs to something that can only be understood but not expressed in words. Some people can learn the same eloquence, but others will never reach the threshold in their lifetime. Only words and spirits that are suitable for oneself or that one can comprehend can have the opportunity to integrate and master, like using one's arms and fingers. Look at it yourself. Qi Shan generously lent out the scroll. If you don't understand, ask again. Shen Tang took it with great curiosity, and as soon as he saw the line, he looked bewildered. Qi Shan. Don't recognize the characters on it. If that's the case, he can't help either. Shen Tang shook his head. I know the words above, I just want to ask, things like looking for plum blossoms to quench thirst. Are they also words? Of course, although it may seem as refined and short as a martial arts spirit, its power cannot be underestimated, and it is also one of the several spirits that strategists must master. If the executor has a strong literary heart and uses it properly, it can even influence the victory or defeat of a war in critical moments. Shen Tang was stunned. Left and right. The outcome of the war. Of course, using this phrase can boost the morale of an army. Seeing Shen Tang's skeptical expression, he thought that he had misunderstood the spirit of speech for a long time. He then said, this passage was originally very long, recorded in a false and deceitful article. Wei Wuxing lost his way during the battle, and the army was thirsty, so he ordered. There was a big plum forest in front, Rao Zi, and the sweetness and sourness can quench thirst. When the soldiers heard it, their mouths all flowed, and they took advantage of it to reach the source. But after being refined, only 4 words remained. Shen Tang opened his mouth slightly, his expression as he opened the door to the new world. So. Is this dotted with stars? Qi Shandao said, you can arrange your troops and play against the enemy. Cut down the grass and eradicate the roots. Boosting soldiers' strength is extremely costly and should not be used lightly. Shen Tang pointed to the scroll and asked again, throw yourself into the net. Qi Shandao said, it is often used for arranging troops, interfering with enemy forces, and causing them to become disorganized. Don't ask any more questions about the rest. Just look at the dense notes of Qi Shan, and you will know that each one is used for marching and fighting. No wonder he said he wasn't a good person. Looking at these literary and spiritual expressions, and then at the simulated military formation depicted on the scroll, Shen Tang knew that this guy was a fanatical enthusiast who defended himself by attacking and squatting on the grass, almost writing, I'm LYB, on his face. Mr. Qi, I have another question. Qi Shan believed in her evil. How long have we known each other? Her 3 sentences and 2 sentences are questions. After asking this, there must be another one. However, thinking of Shen Tang's literary heart, he squinted his eyes and showed a bit more patience. You ask. Shen Tang saw behind and found that there were not only literary and artistic expressions, but also martial courage expressions. To be honest, she doesn't quite understand the difference between the two. Not everyone is very good at playing. What is the specific difference between Wenxin and Wudong? Prayer for goodness. He once again suspected that Shen Tang was a wild man from some corner, and every question was beyond his expectations. The QWQ checkpoint has been updated, which can be considered as the second update. Let's go and finish writing the remaining part of the boss's new series. End of this chapter. Chapter 9009. Watching Plums to Quench Thirst. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9009. Watching Plums to quench thirst. The air awkwardly quieted for 3 breaths. Qi Shan reluctantly replied, martial courage condenses qi in the body, and literary mind controls it externally. Although Shen Tang really wants to say that he understands to avoid being misunderstood as having an IQ problem, I don't quite understand. Can Mr. Qi explain it in more detail? Qi Shan doesn't expect Shen Tang to understand at once. This young gentleman may really be a wild man from some corner, speaking concisely and tactfully that she couldn't understand. So Qi Shan changed to using more popular language. Martial courage, with martial as its core. Warriors, from the beginning to the end, conquer and demonstrate. From the beginning to the end, use war to stop the war. Therefore, most of the speech and spirit are applied to themselves, refining their bodies to make them powerful and unparalleled. With one enemy, many are cowardly. Shen Tang nodded thoughtfully. Most of the words and spirits act on oneself, isn't there a small portion that says so? Yes, taking the example of the saying, 1 call, 100 responses. If the lords and strategists use it, it can mobilize 100 soldiers, but if the generals use it, they can make 100 soldiers wear armor and mount horses, solidifying their momentum into a sharp sword. If the hearts of the upper and lower armies are united, the elite will become stronger and unparalleled. Qi Shan has already gained experience and predicted Shen Tang's prediction, answering her questions first. Some words and spirits are universal in both literary and martial arts, so there's no need to be curious about them. The effect of the same speech and spirit varies among different people, depending on individual understanding and cultivation level. Shen Tang. Qi Shan continued, Wenxin is different from Wu Dan. The essence of Wenxin lies in the 2 words plan and calculation. Therefore, Yanling tends to lean towards control and layout, and through Yanling, he always controls complex and ever-changing situations. Wu Dan is of the 20th grade, and the higher the rank, the stronger the strength. Therefore, people believe that Wenxin is also the same, and the higher the grade, the stronger the strength. However, in my opinion, this is a very wrong understanding. Wenxin is competing here. He pointed to his own brain. If your brain is not strong enough, even if you have a 2nd-level Chinese heart, don't easily provoke a 9th-level lower-level Chinese heart who doesn't know the details. Shen Tang pondered for a while. She felt as if she understood but not yet. Wu Dan is a person who personally fights, and if he is stronger, he forms cliques and leads his brothers to fight together. However, Wenxin will not easily end up, but instead hires other thugs to fight for him as a big shot behind the scenes. Does the former show off his muscles, while the latter shows off his brain? One output, one auxiliary. After praying for goodness, listen quietly for a few moments. Although he couldn't understand what xiu meant, he could guess the general meaning by combining it with the context. You can understand it that way, he said expressionlessly. Shen Tang pondered for a while before asking. But isn't this very passive? Passive. No matter how clever the brain is, it cannot withstand the enemy's many fists. Wenxin is an auxiliary command role, and many skills are like this. The output mostly relies on martial courage. Once caught alone, wouldn't it be like pulling your neck and killing? As an adult, you can't be both cultured and brave. Do you need both? Can you only choose one and cultivate one? She wants both fish and bear's paws. Qi Shan understood her thoughts slightly. Since records began, there have been examples of both literary and martial courage condensed simultaneously, but what? Qi Shan played with the bonfire and said calmly, either you died young or foolish, or your abilities are mediocre and no different from ordinary people. Shen Tang. She is not worthy of the golden finger of civil and military double cultivation. She held the scroll in her arms, feeling dizzy. She knows every word above, and she can also jot down the experience notes written by Qi Shan at a glance, but she is confused about how to cultivate and use them. Please consult with novice NPCs, their language is also profound, with a complete flow of consciousness and idealism. Sure enough, there shouldn't be too many demands for free prostitution. As time passed, the Five Organs Temple began to sound gongs and drums again. Shen Tang rubbed his stomach and looked at the plum blossom to quench thirst on the scroll, with the appearance of a green-mouthed plum appearing in his mind. It's not that when Xian can create something out of nothing. It's not unreasonable for you to give me a few green plums to quench my thirst, right? If there are more green plums, you can make some other dishes to eat. Qi Shan had excellent ear power and poured a basin of cold water on her. Of course it's too much. Although Yanling is magical, it cannot provide people with food. If it could, there wouldn't be so many people starving to death in the world. I don't know what came to mind, but Qi Shan sighed lightly at the bonfire. A few months ago, while traveling outside, I saw a city of people with my own eyes. He paused here and took the initiative to end the conversation. Without his explicit words, Shen Tang can also brainstorm his future. It's nothing more than a human tragedy filled with starvation. She said, why not? Words and spirits can transform into sharp swords, war horses, and armor, and can make a man's strength rival 1,000 armies and horses. Why can't they transform into small green plums? They are also made out of nothing, how can they still engage in discrimination? Even if they really can't, can they still help agriculture? Working with literary and martial courage, even if the efficiency is not as good as mechanization, it is much better than ordinary people facing the yellow earth and facing the sky. If food can be transformed, she thinks she can sell plums to make some money. It's really difficult for her to travel through a different world and become a penniless and still a fugitive prisoner. She's just an ordinary otaku painter. If this road is also blocked, she can only copy her old profession to draw for others. I don't know who is willing to ask her for a draft. Pray for goodness without giving a positive answer. Just said, I can't answer the previous question, but the last one. You will know if you have more experience in the future. Who is willing to forge a sword into a plow in this murky and chaotic world? They will definitely be attacked by a group. Little Lang Jun's ideas were not without previous attempts, and there were also ambitious individuals who lobbied and assisted the feudal lords in advocating for change, but they all failed for various reasons and ended in a tragic outcome. Thinking of these unpleasant contents, he impatiently closed his eyes and took a nap, occasionally hearing Shen Tang muttering, looking for plum blossoms to quench thirst. After about half a quarter of an hour, she was still struggling with the desire to quench her thirst. Qi Shan's eyes remained open. Learning to speak spiritually requires fate, and there are countless words in the world. If you don't achieve something, don't waste time delving into it. Just move on to another place. Of course, you can't learn everything. You can't chew too much, and the essence is not as valuable. Oh, I understand. Following was a crisp click and chewing sound. Prayer for goodness. Half of the remaining dry food and water bags are with him. Where will Shen Xiaolang go to eat? I can vaguely smell a scent of green plum fruit. Qi Shan. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Shen Tang. The latter was sitting cross-legged on the ground, with about 10 round green plums piled up on both legs, each looking tender and delicious. Shen Tang's brows furrowed as he chewed, his face furrowed, but he had to swallow it because he was too hungry. Where did you green plums, come from? Qi Shan opened his eyes wide, spoke in a difficult tone, and rolled his throat several times before regaining his language ability. Shen Tang blinked his eyes, forcing the sore spots back. Green plums. Oh, I've been trying to use the phrase, quench thirst with plum blossoms and trying my best to stimulate my writing, but it hasn't had the effect you mentioned in your notes. Then I tried a few more times and out of thin air, an extra plum appeared. Look, that's it. Wishing plum blossoms to quench thirst. Shen Tang finished speaking and demonstrated it again. As the words fell, a green plum appeared out of thin air in her palm under the gaze of Qi Shan. This is today's update. Is it going to be a typhoon or a head-on-one? I feel like I can't sleep at night. End of this chapter. Chapter 10:010. The Way of Marquises. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10:010. The Way of Marquises. Shen Tang took another bite. She almost felt sour and her facial features shifted. Although it's sour and there's only one voice at a time, the yield is low, but it's good to eat. After all, it's a green plum bought for free, so the requirements cannot be too high. She is planning to make more and turn it into green plums, pickled plums, or green plum wine. Anyway, it is a cost-free transaction. Even if it cannot make a big profit, there should be no problem supporting herself. She carefully picked a big, green, and sour plum and handed it to Qi Shan. Here, Mr. Qi, would you like to taste it? Qi Shan didn't take it immediately. First, she lowered her eyes to look at the green plum in her hand, and then lifted her eyelids to look at Shen Tang's proud smile of putting his hands on a fat wolf. Her eyebrows twitched fiercely, and veins seemed to be faintly visible on her forehead. Does this young gentleman know for a long time? Qi Shan sighed and caught it. Rub your sleeve randomly and take a bite. Indeed sour. Both the hand feel and the taste are the same as those of green plum which is not yet ripe. Seeing that Qi Shan's expression management was gradually getting out of control, Shen Tang smiled and said, if it were more cooked, the taste should be better. I don't know if there are any words that can transform into wine. If there are, brew a green plum wine and hide it. When it snows in the winter, go to the lake to enjoy the scenery, cook tea, drink wine, and taste the green plum. Isn't it enjoyable? Qi Shan looked at Shen Tang with complex eyes. Sighing, if you think it's good, then it's good. Don't regret today's reckless move in the future. Shen Tang's act of gnawing on green plums paused, with a puzzled expression on his face. Mr. Qi, what you mean by this? Is it not a good thing to be able to transform something? Will I regret it? To others is naturally a good thing, but for you, it may not be a good thing. His gaze at Shen Tang was tinged with a hint of regret, as if she had lost a big treasure without her knowledge. Before Shen Tang began to delve deeper into the matter, the tone suddenly changed. Of course, if Shen Xiaolang doesn't have much ambition and only wants 2 full meals and a house to shelter from the wind and rain, this can also be considered a good thing. Shen Tang chewed on green plums, appearing confused on the surface, but frowned inwardly. I speculate why Qi Shan said so. She tentatively asked, is it related to my literary style? Qi Shan was surprised by her sensitivity and nodded, it's somewhat related. Shen Tang appeared to be listening attentively, but to his surprise, Qi Shan did not cooperate and did not intend to elaborate. What did he say? Is it possible that the national seal hidden by Gao Mei+1 Shen Xiaolang? Even if he doesn't have much interest in the national seal, Shen Xiaolang may not think so. To avoid unnecessary misunderstandings, it's better to pretend not to know. Most importantly, he suspected that Shen Xiaolang's literary spirit had already resonated with the national seal, unintentionally awakening the way of the feudal lords. The relationship between Wenxin, Wudong, and Guishi is very special. The national seal not only has the ability to control national affairs and defend against external enemies, but also has a crucial ability, which is the way of feudal lords. Marquises with literary and martial courage hold the national seal, and have the opportunity to echo it. According to their inner thoughts, they randomly acquire a special ability. The marquises who choose more are generally commanding, friendly to the people, supporters, and even have literary and martial courage that can enhance their literary and martial abilities. With this ability, they can recruit many talented and extraordinary people for their use. He is not clear about Shen Tang's ways of being a vassal, but it is definitely related to agriculture. Otherwise, how can green plums be transformed? A feudal lord with a natural talent in agriculture just listening reveals that there is no future ahead. However, Shen Xiaolang doesn't seem to have much ambition and only seeks self-protection. This ability is extremely suitable, at least he can't starve to death. Shen Tang, who had a cat scratching inside, said, I hate to leave suspense halfway through the conversation and make people guess what's going on. Sir, I don't want to go into detail. There is a reason why I shouldn't ask too many questions, but after all, it concerns myself. Shen Tang took a step back and made various insinuations. I guess, is there something wrong with my writing skills? Is this problem serious? Could it be saved? Qishan answered straightforwardly, no. As far as he knows, a national seal corresponds to one feudal lord and a way of feudal lords. This innate ability also requires the use of the national seal as a medium to activate, except in one case, which is usually fixed and unchanging throughout one's life. What kind of situation? Death. Must die and cannot be changed. As long as Shen Xiaolang is still alive, this national seal in her hands can only be her current ability. The only benefit is not worrying about starving to death. If Mr. Shen has ambition, it would be disastrous. Failed to start, congenital deformity, not a match for other wolves, tigers, and leopards. Watching Qi Shan's face gradually darken, Shen Tang felt that the green plum in his hand was no longer fragrant. Is your life not long? For a moment, countless ideas swirled and flashed in her mind. If it weren't for Qishan's voice pulling back her thoughts, she could have imagined herself lying on her sickly side writing a suicide note. Shen Xiaolang, besides the green plum that can quench thirst, can you change anything else? Shen Tang shook his head and said, I don't know, but I can give it a try. Qishan pulled out another scroll and pointed to the section of Yen Ling on it, saying, then try this section of Yen Ling. Shen Tang leaned closer and murmured, painting the ground and making cakes is not something to eat. This passage is similar to, hoping for plum blossoms to quench thirst. Since, quenching thirst with plum blossoms, can transform into green plums, this speech may make a big cake. Shen Tang said, but they are all inedible. How can we eat the pancakes we draw? Why not simplify them to draw pancakes to satisfy our hunger. Cookies are fuller than green plum pipes. Green plums are certainly fresh, but this thing is too small and sour, and Shen Tang's iron-beaten stomach dare not eat more. I just gnawed on about 20, and my gums are numb and sore. I tried more than 10 times but there was no movement. She was somewhat discouraged, and her eyes lit up as she casually scanned the densely packed spiritual notes on the scroll. She moved her finger and stopped at a paragraph of text, saying, Mr. Qi, compared to drawing pancakes, I think this paragraph is more interesting. Some petrified gold, and some foot bu fu. Point petrochemical gold. The second understands that Shen Tang is playing Xiao Jiujiu. Yes, turning a stone into gold. How many caddies of green plums and pancakes can a small piece of gold buy? In terms of value, naturally, this statement has a higher spirit, and not only that. There is also a golden house hides coquettishness that can be arranged, but it is unclear whether it will be transformed into a golden house or a coquettishness. If it's jiao, this jiao is male or female, beautiful or ugly. Qi Shan's gaze at Shen Tang seemed to be that of a fool daydreaming. Not very old, I think it's quite beautiful. If you're not afraid of sudden death, you can give it a try. Shen Tang. Qi Shan smiled and said, the value and effectiveness of the spirit of speech depend on the consumption of the literary heart. The stronger the literary heart, the greater the consumption, and the stronger the power of the spirit of speech. If you forcefully use a spirit of speech beyond your ability, it is easy to say that you have failed. At most, you will be weak for a while, and once successful, it will inevitably backfire on the performer. For example, your lifespan will be shortened, your prime will be premature, your body will be plagued by illness, your bed will be entangled, and even someone's 7 orifices will bleed and die on the spot. Throughout history, such tragedies have been common, and Shen Xiaolang Jun should not follow the footsteps of others just because of curiosity and greed. How is the value of a green plum and a cake compared to gold, silver, and jade? Everything comes at a cost. There's a problem with the computer and we're on strike. Sigh, I'm calling from my phone. The new book period is too damaging, it seems like we need to change our equipment. End of this chapter.